So management of dog aggression, dog reactivity. The reason why I'm doing this is the vast majority of owners, whether they've seen trainers or not, are managing the problem rather than fixing it. And there's a lot of reasons to do that. First of all, in the early days, you have to manage it anyway, even if your training is absolutely perfect, because you have to layer it up and you cannot control the environment. You're going to have dogs coming at you from all directions. They're going to pop up round corners. They might even run over to you. So there will be a level of management anyway, even if your training is 100% great. But there's other reasons, it might not be the technique is too good for your dog. It might be that things are going wrong too much on too many occasions for your dog to make progress. It might be the genetics of your dog are too kind of strong to ever want to be at that level of, being happy with dogs. So you will need to do management anyway, no matter your situation. And it can feel a bit, it's a bit like, you wanted this dog so you could go out and have non-stressful walks and just to be with you and your friend outdoors, having fun, let them off, being connected and all that. And the other dogs are ruining it for you. And it's getting busier and busier depending where you are. I'm down in Kent and I can tell you that every year I notice a difference. That's quite a lot to notice a difference every single year. It used to be that in the winter you wouldn't see a soul, so that's pretty much 6 months of the year. And, even at the weekend, you wouldn't be bumping into dog after dog. Now, if I go out to Moat Park or something at the weekend, it's just hell for me and Flicker. We do a lot of management, so I feel I am well versed in management, apart from being a behaviourist. This is what we have to live with, and she's 10 years old now. So I'm basically sharing all the tricks and tips that we do to help her. A lot of her problem is genetic. She's like a missing link between the wolf and the dog, right? She's a camp dog. She really doesn't want to be even in a house. She would like to be in the mountains with kind of people nearby that she can get scraps off, and she'll bark occasionally to let you know someone's there, and she'll probably join in a hunt as well because she likes chasing things. But she doesn't really want to be in society where there's noises, where she's trapped in a house and things like that. So genetically, if you're interested, she's a European village dog, and most people just call them street dogs from Romania. So if you've got one of those, congratulations. The next 15 years are going to be really hard for you. But, it is difficult, and it is a bit, it kind of brings you down a bit because you want to be kind of running around the woods with your best friend in tune, and like other people's dogs are kind of spoiling it for you. So I completely understand, but at some point, you've obviously decided, right, I'm going to suck it up, and this is how I'm going to manage it. And yes, my walks will be different from what I imagined and what from most people's walks will be, but this is how we're going to do it because I love my dog. And I can tell you absolutely still can have pleasurable walks with your dog. Don't think, some people I know walk at 2 a.m. I think that's a bit extreme. I've never changed times I walk the dog, to be fair. I do kind of avoid weekends. Like I said, like Moat Park's a bit mental, and I do choose more places to go. I think about it a bit more at the weekend. Even stuff like that can be management. So you've really got to think things through, but it can be done. Me and Flick have a great time. We don't have a great time when dog comes up because her reaction's quite extreme. She doesn't bite, but she would give a hard nip, as in I've seen her pull fluff out of a German Shepherd, and that was when I thought, just muzzle her and it's fine. But her reaction is really over the top, sounds demonic. She would like to chase them off. She body slams them or pins them down, and it's all that, it's all that horrible because she only tolerates polite dogs. So because of her genetics, again, she's very old school. So she believes that dogs should only interact from like another mountain away. They would never be coming and sniffing every dog. Put it like that. That just would never happen. They would look at the other dog, read the signals, which her signals are very subtle. She kind of tenses a bit. Her tail, it goes down, but it kind of kinks. So it just looks like a normal tail to everyone else, but it kind of becomes tight and a bit curly, and it's low. And she lowers her head slightly. She turns her head slightly, which is a mid calming signal, and she'll show the white of her eyes. And very sensitive dogs look at that and they walk away. But I've only met like 3 in the 10 years I've had her. So most dogs don't even bother reading that. And then they come over, say hello, and she goes absolutely ballistic and hits the roof. So, it's kind of distressing for everyone involved. Me, Flicker, the owner, the other dog, the other two are not expecting it. Me and Flicker are expecting this. We're very well versed in this psychotic reaction. So we do a lot of management now. And, I did about 2 solid years of training at least 4 times a week for 2 hours at a time with her, where we went to places and we did a lot of positive training around other dogs. And actually she was getting really good. She could meet and greet dogs for a couple of seconds without having a complete panic attack. But what ruined it, and I think this is mainly where I live as well, because it is extremely busy, is other dogs coming up uninvited and bouncing all over her. And because that happens so regularly, about every 6 months for us, it sets her back, like a year. So you might have a dog like that. Now, it is rare. Most dogs aren't, so don't kind of panic too much. It's more like Romanian dogs, very sensitive dogs, things like that. But, if you have too many incidents too close together where your dog can't progress, it will never progress. And in that case, you just have to kind of fall on the management scheme. But you will have to manage anyway, because that's the way dog training is layered, right? So you've got to start easier than deep end. So management's always useful. But that's where me and Flick are at. So it was getting really good, very painfully slow progress, admittedly. But then, an off-lead puppy came up and happy, lovely, tiny little thing. And, and it kind of went to see her and she just went absolutely nuts. And then 6 months later, we had someone's German Shepherds come running up. And even though they didn't actually get to her, because I stood in between and kind of, grabbed them and threw them away, she's still reacting. So, because she's not sitting there silently, she's still reacting, so she's relearnt it. So it's just constantly rewiring the brain and making that pathway strong again, where I'm trying to dissolve it and feed new pathways and let that old one die back. It just regrows. So, so then, I did do management anyway, but now I just pretty much purely do management. The only time where I consider doing training is if we're meeting someone new and they're walking with us, and then I will do it properly just so that she can get to walk with this dog. So our walks are basically, she can go off lead. That's a big one with reactive dogs. Most people can't get them off lead, so she can go off lead. She goes off lead in big parks. That's absolutely fine. So she's getting, her needs met. We can also walk with dogs that we've kind of become friends with. We can walk with them absolutely fine off lead. She plays with them, and we can meet new dogs. So if someone joined us for a walk, within 20 minutes, she'll accept that dog. She will snap at it. Yes, I explained that, but if you do it subtly and you can dial back the reaction, so it's not that horrendous reaction, but she will have a kind of a snap and a lunge. It just won't be the whole, pretending to maul the other dog and chasing off and body slamming and horrible noises coming out of her face. So you can dial it back. So she doesn't pull on a lead. We can walk past dogs absolutely fine. We can go to cafes, pubs and sit down. So that's the life we've got, right? So I'm sure most people with a reactive dog would love to have that. They know, I don't want Disney Tilly. I just want to be able to walk my dog and it's not pulling my arms out or freaking out about everything. So you can get to that level. What you might not be able to get to is the level of, what I would really want Flick to do, which is just to ignore other dogs if they sniff her bum. So I'm going to kind of tell you how to kind of manage it and throw in a few hints and tips of what you need to work on as well. So managing, first thing is obviously go to quiet places. Weekends are always going to be busier, so go off the beaten track. I prefer, because also she likes chasing things through hedges and stuff, which gets a lot of her exercise needs met just from that. I prefer going to kind of mainstream parks like Moat Park, but off the path. So this was mainly because I was following my toddler for a few years, and you get to see all kinds of weird places in parks, to be honest. Sometimes you see some kind of people in tents, that you will want to turn around and go the other way again, to be fair, just for safety reasons. But you get to see a lot more interesting things. So I tend to follow kind of rabbit hole type of things. So if I see a gap in a hedge, I tend to go and investigate it. And then sometimes you can see that it leads quite a long way down a path. So I tend to go almost within the trees. So I'm not on a main path. It's very unlikely that I'll bump into someone. It's more likely that I'll bump into a homeless person than another dog, to be fair. So look for weirder places that are more likely to be quiet, and definitely stick with these at weekends. Weather's another good one indicator. If it's sunny, you're much more likely to see people. If it's I mean, today it's kind of drizzly and cloudy. I'm not expecting to see many people. It's not raining, but I'm just not expecting to see many people. So that's cheered me up greatly, because we're planning to go to Moat Park today anyway. But again, I will be going off the beaten track and into the woods and down muddy avenues and things anyway. The downside is that it's narrow, so if I do see someone, it's hard to get out of the way. But the plus side is most people don't want to go on those. They just want to stick to the path. So do find weirder places to go to. Definitely use the weather as your indicator. Your few things that you want to work on really is not pulling, which is a separate thing from anything else anyway. Not pulling, getting used to seeing dogs at a distance and not barking. That's more like a leave it game, and the two are different. So if your dog doesn't pull, and then when it sees a dog it pulls, this is a different problem, and you need to treat it differently. You need to teach, somewhat to a leave it, i.e. don't look at the dog, look at me, have loads of chicken and cheese, whatever. But you need to do it stationary. That's really important. If you do it moving forward at an early stage, you can do it later, but at an early stage, it's very unlikely the dog will be able to concentrate because you're on the move. You need to pull your dog to the side, create some distance. However much distance you need depends on your dog's reaction, because you obviously need it not to react in order to learn not to react, and then ask it to look at you for as much as possible while blocking its view from the other dog. Good place to practice this are car parks of doggy areas, and for that, to be honest, I do tend to use a weekend, because I kind of want dog after dog after dog on a lead. That's why I like the car park, because they're going to be on a lead for safety, so they're not going to come over to you, but just so your dog can kind of have a look and gain some trust, so that they're not just going to come flying over, and jump all over you guys. So definitely work on that. That will give you, on its own, that will give you things like being able to sit in a pub quietly and not pulling your arms out. So basically, if you're walking where every other dog's on lead, that will give you that option straight away. Your next thing that you really need to work on is recall. Now, recall can take a year or two. It's something that you should be practicing every single walk, just to kind of really nail it down. So that's every single day for an hour, say, at least if not two. But that's really what you wanna work on. If you can stop your dog reacting fairly close, and they're just fairly calm with dogs, they can be uncomfortable. Flick's fairly uncomfortable when there's a dog within a metre, but she won't bark. If your dog can just get to that level, that means that when you let them off, they're not going to react, because a lot of people have, you can't let your dog off because it's going charging at dogs. But again, that reverts back to the problem of, well, actually, you just need to train your dog to ignore dogs at a close distance, so that you can then trust them to be let off. Whenever I see a dog that's off lead or on a flexi, I call Flicker, back to me. And to be honest, she's learnt this herself now. She will come back. Now, this is very key to understand. This doesn't help with your dog's learning, because what you're telling your dog, oh, there's another dog up there, we've got to regroup. And regrouping, we would only do that if it's dangerous. So it's telling your dog that something's wrong, if that makes sense, not confident. So you would want to do, you kind of, if you're looking for progress, you would do the opposite. You would use a line or something. But if we're just talking management, like I am with Flicker, because I did use a line for a bit and it was just horrendous. I thought, I can't deal with the stress. So we're just going to, so I call her back, I put her on one side, and any dogs coming up I block. And because we're on the move and there's loads of dogs about anyway, they don't come up. Or if they do, then I kind of, what I do is say I'm walking forwards, I've got her on my left, a dog's coming up, I will kind of squash her behind me a bit, make the dog pass on my right, and then what normally happens, if there's not enough distractions for that dog coming up, they'll go to a bum. And then what I do is I just let her go forwards again. So now she's in front of me, right? So I'm blocking the dog from behind. And to be honest, that's usually enough if you're on the move going opposite directions. Then the other dog is like, oh, can't be bothered, and moves on. That's the way I do it. Flick's a bit uncomfortable with this, but there's no barking, there's no snarling, there's no incident. And after a few more paces, I let her off again. that's what we do. So I'm managing it. So I'm basically not letting the dog near her, and that keeps her calmer as well. She's less likely to react because I've kind of saved her from the big scary dog type of thing. That's one thing that you've definitely got to get in your head, is you've got to stop dogs coming up to your dog. You know, the easiest way, again, this is kind of why I like the woods, really. I don't like open spaces because there's not a lot you can do in the middle of the field. I like kind of the edges or near bushes, and you can literally just shove your dog in the bush. They might not enjoy it. I've had to throw flicker and stingers and stuff, so they didn't appreciate it. But you kind of throw them in a little hole and stand in front of them and wait for the dogs to pass. And that's how you can kind of stop them coming up to you. The more you can stop a dog coming up to you, the less your dog will react, because they can see that, oh, you've got this, so I don't need to, back you up with loads of horrible noise. But to be honest, your key thing, you should be practicing recall anyway, but if your dog's got good recall without dogs, then your key thing really is practicing that kind of leave it command, which is treat based, right? So it's like, don't look at the dog, look at me, have a treat. It's treat based. You practice that one, and that will get your further recall, if you like, and your further pulling, if again it doesn't pull, unless there's a dog. It's a reactivity problem, not a pulling problem or a recall problem. I speak more deeply on this, by the way, if you're looking at kind of the reactivity, and you want that final piece of recall. I've done a podcast on this, just purely on that. It's called like the number one problem with recall and how to fix it. So something like that, something about number one problem. So go and have a look at that if you need that. But yeah, so basically, you can, anyone that meets Flicker thinks she's really well trained, and that I mean she is, but I wouldn't say that because she's horrendous with dogs up close. But the fact that I can have, it looks to other people, it looks like a normal walk. She can be off, she can come back, she doesn't go after dogs, she doesn't pull, she doesn't bark. You can have that with a reactive dog. I have seen things recently where they kind of put like blinkers on dogs and things like that. Never used them. I wouldn't rule them out as a management thing. I imagine it's really useful. It would not help again with your progress because you're avoiding kind of the situation. So next time it does see a dog, it's much more likely to react in a stronger way because it's only been seeing it through a gauze or only half seeing it, if that makes sense. I met somebody who, I didn't know this until I saw him, otherwise I might have changed things around a bit, but every time the dog went outside, I mean, he said he barks at dogs, like screams at dogs. It was a Boston, so they can be a bit screamy. But actually, when I got there, it screamed as soon as it went outdoors. And then when I spoke to him, he said, oh yeah, I've been walking it at 2 a.m. So the dog's just been used to darkness. So that means that when it's walked in the day, it's worse than what it was because you've just been kind of avoiding. And this is what I believe any kind of blinkering of the eyesight would do as well. It's not something that I would do too much of. In your management, you want to avoid, as in, you don't really want to kind of flood your dog in, with a crazy weekend of, moat park and families and things. But doing very wacky things like walking at night and putting blinkers on your dog, personally, I wouldn't do. I'd be doing the car park thing, ideally after a walk, so your dog's tired, much more likely to listen, calmer, blah, blah, blah. That's what I'd be doing for the main thing. It's like, there's a dog, look at me. There's a dog, look at me. If your dog's barking or overreacting, it just means you're too close. That's all. That's literally it. If your dog can't listen, you're just too close. Some people have to be really far away. And you think, God, well, I'd have to be blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, that's how you start then. If you have to be half an acre away, that's where you start. There's a range of techniques. I'm just giving you very, very basic ideas, but that's generally the rule of thumb. There are other ways you can calm dogs down. It depends on the breed. So some breeds you can kind of turn them with your legs. If they're hip height, you can force them to turn by just kind of like going almost like another dog would at the shoulder level, forcing them to turn round. Little terriers, you can't really do that because they're small. So what I tend to do is I tend to kind of zigzag them on a longer lead, so it forces them to turn. So I'm like, come on, this way, that way, so they can't focus on the dog. So turning the eyes means you can usually get closer, and obviously there's some skill level involved, so you can get closer. But say you're like doing it yourself, you don't really know many techniques, or whatever, then your number one friend is distance above anything. And chicken's your second best friend, or whatever your dog likes. Hot dogs, I don't really care, but something really high value that they're not used to would be my absolute go-to for these scenarios. The last thing, I'm just going to throw this in because it's just come to me, to be honest, but it is very important, and it's something that most people don't kind of correlate indoor and outdoor. I've done other podcasts on what to do indoor, and I'm not going to recover absolutely everything, but one thing that is most certainly related is if your dog barks out the window at other dogs, people, whatever. You've got to stop that, because it's just practicing the behaviour. You can't expect him to just bark out the window all day aggressively at dogs and things pass us by and then be fine outdoors. If you've got a problem outdoors, you have to sort out everything indoors as well. Like you have to hit it on two levels. It doesn't necessarily mean it will go that way. So if you've got a dog that barks at the window, it could well be friendly outdoors, but if it isn't, you have to cover everything, because it's such a big problem, if that makes sense. You have to kind of break everything down and rebuild it. It's not that one leads to another, it's just that it's too similar to ignore. So you do have to approach it, both ways. And the window thing, again, I'm not going to go into it on this one because I've already done it, but it's very similar to the leave it outside. It's just kind of teaching them to observe things in silence so that they can kind of come down off that adrenaline level and not get so stressed out of their heads about it, and just accept that things come. You're never going to stop full barking. That's kind of our primary reason why we've always had dogs, is they're good watchdogs. And they let us know if things are about. So you're never going to stop them barking, but they shouldn't be kind of hysterical at everything walking past. Coming to the door, a few barks is one thing. Noticing every kind of leaf, bird, tree, cat that goes past is not. That's really territorial behaviour, and you just need to dial it back. And it's stressful for the dog. It's not fair on them. They shouldn't be subjected to that much stress. It's it's not their position to kind of look out and guard the family with their lives is what they're thinking. They don't realise that it's safe. They're going through it, So I like getting on top of that anyway, but definitely if you've got any reactivity outside, address it inside as well. So that's basically what I would do. I would say it probably is the majority of training to where I've got with Flicker, but I do still manage it, as in I don't let dogs just come up to her willy-nilly. So you can get to a good point with your dog with training and management. There doesn't have to be an end goal, is what I'm trying to say, of, I can just let my dog off and it can play with all the dogs. You may not get to that, but like I am with Flicker, you can still have really good, enjoyable walks with your dog without noise and without much stress. You do have to do a bit of work first if your dog kind of barks at all dogs just on sight, but you can also just accept, this is how my dog is, they're not that friendly with dogs, I'm going to manage situations, turning around, directions, stuff like that, picking your time of day. But yeah, that's the way we deal with things. So yeah, good luck and keep going. Don't worry, reactive dogs, they are out there, you're not alone. But understand that it is stressful, it does bring you down. I think it's just something you have to accept and just move forward. They're still your buddy, they're still your best mate. They would still rather be with you than, in a kennel or rehomed or anything. That upsets them the most is that kind of thing. So they're still, you're doing your best, and hopefully these tips will help you guys move forward with your relationship together.
You've been listening to Tilly the Dog Behaviourist from Fawn Dog. For our full list of services, please go to fawndog121dogtraining.co.uk. We do home visits and telephone consultations now too. Videos can be found on our Instagram, TikTok and Facebook page. And I've just started a new podcast which goes deep and personal into the home visits that I do. And this is all about the specifics. So it's not general programs, it's why use what technique for what particular dog, their age and breed, personality, all comes into it. So go and check that out. It's subscriber only, but it's only $3 a month. Thanks for listening.